All right. You don't need to click. Yes. Pretty good.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tina Stoika. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you to the EC and Trey for asking us to come and talk about mental health. We're excited to be part of your monthly Lunch and Learn. Hang On Health usually does an event once a month, every third Tuesday of the month, and just feel like being this month with Mental Health Awareness Month, it was extra special that we got to tag team with the EC even more. Oh, yep, I already covered that. Thanks to DC. What? So today I just wanted to go over, or I'll tell you the agenda, starting with some thank yous. I just mentioned the third Tuesday of every month. These are the dates, and happy to send this around if you're interested. The EC also puts it on their event website. For Mental Health Month, I've done a couple extra events than I normally would. Obviously, we're here today to hear Johnny and Rusty. On Tuesday, earlier this week, had kind of a different vibe and feel, if you will. With Brooke Odell, we held this out in Cool Springs, and Brooke is the founder or the CEO of Sugar Drop Bakery in Franklin. She had it for about 7 or 8 years, and the topic there was more around running a business, putting everything you have into it, and she ended up having to file for bankruptcy. And so what are all the emotions and feelings and things behind that? Much longer story, but was really interesting. And then today we'll focus a lot on imposter syndrome, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then on May 22nd, Hang On Health is having another joint event with a company called B2 Wellness Suites. If you're familiar with like a Sola salon or a JC salon, it is a floor or 2 floors of just all wellness professionals. And so we're bringing entrepreneurs there to meet with all the different kinds of wellness folks that can help them improve physically and then, of course, mentally. Thank you, of course, to Johnny and Rusty for being here. Very excited about this. So Rusty and I met years ago through we're all sales folks, and you and I met, through LinkedIn or something, actually. You'll hear a little of my background, but I was working at an organization in Washington, D.C. I was there for 10 years called Corporate Executive Board, and they're very well known for their sales practices and consulting. And when he saw I worked there, he's like, I love CEV's work. And so we just totally bonded right off the bat on sales skills and things along those lines, and have grown to be great friends. He also messaged me when he saw what I was doing and said, oh, this is really great. You know, if you ever need a speaker, let me know. I could talk on imposter syndrome or XYZ. And I had just met with Johnny, and he was talking about imposter syndrome. And I was like, perfect, I could put you two together. Little did I know that they were actually great friends. So I'm excited for our conversation today. Yeah. So before I continue, there is a little social media challenge. Hang On Health is very new, and we're trying to raise our brand awareness. And so anybody who tags Hang On Health at Hang On Health on Instagram or LinkedIn, you are entered to win a $25 gift card to Amazon. And every time you do a post or tag us, that counts as another entry. So please help us spread the word. Oh, are you doing it? Okay, thanks. So we already just talked about May being Mental Health Awareness Month. There's a green ribbon on all the tables. This obviously signifies this special time, so please take them with you, and I'll make sure that you wear them, or I'll check in to make sure you're wearing them every day this month. So just a little bit about mental health in general before we get into the specifics of entrepreneurs and business. I can send this around after, obviously it's very small, but I wanted to read some of this to you. These are stats. So there are 33 million small business owners. 75% of them are concerned with their mental health. And if you think about it, small business owners make up 99.9% of businesses. So that's a lot of owners. Entrepreneurs have 2 times higher chances of suicidal ideation and depression. They have 10 times higher chances to have bipolar, 6 times higher chances for ADHD. Employees with inadequate mental health miss 4 times more work. And then 65% of startups fail due to human-centric reasons, 20% of those, again, due to mental health. Entrepreneurs have 3 times higher chances of addiction. 77% of founders refuse to seek help. I'm not sure what that says about their businesses if that's the case. And then 81% of founders hide their struggles. More than 50% hide it from their co-founders. And lastly, I find this stat really mind-blowing. In general, there are 340 people for every one mental health professional. So basically therapist, social worker, etc. So I think that this is important to keep in mind, especially this month. I know for me, you automatically just start thinking about your own mental health and your own struggles, but it's not, your struggles also affect others, your husband or wife, your parents, your, kids. And so it's not just about us. And it's also about recognizing these signs in our significant others and friends and family and just being aware of what their needs may be as well. The other part of that, obviously we're here to talk about business, is how are mental health struggles impacting your team, or who on your team might be having these struggles that you can learn to identify with and help them to even create more success in your business. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Hang On Health because everybody is pretty new, I think, to us. So we, as I mentioned, launched in October of 24, so almost 9 months ago now. I founded the organization, and based off of my own experiences with mental health as an entrepreneur, I've started 3 businesses. One of which I'm a growth business development consultant, and then a speaker at events. And I started having my mental health struggles in the summer of 21. When I had my last company, it was 615 Innovations, business development consulting. I started off as a fractional CMO for a client, and about 9 months in, I had a whole lot of contractors, 6 contractors, 2 employees on retainer, and 9 months in, she didn't pay her $30,000 invoice. And then just completely black holed. So I, to this day, have no idea where she is or what happened to her. Actually got her in over here at the Entrepreneur Center to the cafe. All of the greenery and lighting and all of that, like I did. Actually, my husband and I did. And she completely black holed on them as well. So that obviously led to a lot of depression. It led to suicidal depression. It led to being diagnosed as having bipolar 2. And I've had ADHD since I was a kid. So having that, knowing, even just owning the business up until that point, it's just me as a solopreneur, but I have all these folks and it's just really stressful. And so I want others to know that they're not alone and that there are resources and other people that are going through this. So I won't spend too much time here, but I'm sure we can all understand or already feel that the 3 biggest challenges of an entrepreneur is isolation. When you're at the top, you feel very alone. You don't know who you can talk to. You can't always talk to your employees. You can't always talk to your significant others. And so you just feel alone and kind of lost. Uninformed. We are uninformed on mental health in general and our diagnoses in general. There are certainly therapists and social workers and whomever else, psychotherapists that can help us. And you can go through talk therapy and CBT therapy and all these things. But for me, what I learned was I kind of want to know the science behind what my body is doing and what is my brain doing. And you only have one brain. I want to know how it works. I want to know how it's impacting me. And it's not just the fear or the crying. There's more behind that. And so becoming more informed with credible, accessible, validated resources is another thing that Hang On Health provides. And then lastly, fearful. We're all scared of failing. We're scared of our business failing, personal failing our friends, family, team. And so I think these are the 3 biggest challenges that we go through as owners. So how do I help with those 3 challenges? Education, events, and community. So kind of twofold, if you will, here. Education is going back to talking with entrepreneurs and having them, in this exact instance, share their stories so that other people know that they're not alone. I want to create a community of belonging and safety where you can tell each other things that you're going through without feeling judged. The education also includes the resources and tools that I was just talking about. Events, again, just like this, kind of goes hand in hand with the community. I'll start to host what I guess you can call networking events, but the difference between a business networking event and Hang on Health event is that I want you to walk away with somebody's phone number that you can call when you're struggling. Yes, will business transactions happen? Probably, but that's not necessarily the point of this. And so the goal is that you won't feel alone, you'll have improved mental health, and at the end of the day, your company is going to be even more successful. So as I wrap up, I mentioned how we're different. One other way that Hang on Health is different is that I think with a lot of business groups and presentations we talk about different challenges and struggles, but it's more along the lines of, okay, my client stole $30,000 from me. I went and got a lawyer. I did this, this, and this, and it's problem solving. But where I want to go beyond that and say, well, how did that actually make you feel? You know, what kind of stress? How did that impact your family or employees? Did you get more vulnerable with that? And so that's where we're different. I have two asks. One is that you get out of your comfort zone, feel safe to raise your hand and talk about something that you may go through or can relate to the guys up here. And then please provide any feedback on how to make Hang on Health even better and help you all. Any other resources. So there'll be a survey at the end, but of course, feel free to come up to me as well. So yeah, so after that, just basically, sorry, I'm almost done. The goals for today, same as Hang on Health. I want you to walk away feeling comforted that you are not alone in this journey and that you have ideas and food for thought from these guys on how you can improve your life and voices in action. Any questions? Okay. So I will, we have Johnny Anderson here and Rusty Goodsell at the end. I'm going to let you guys tell your own kind of origin story and bios, and then we'll get into the questions.
Before we do that, can we give a round of applause? I'm Johnny Anderson. I am a native Nashvilleian. I've been here my entire life. My wife is a native also, so we're kind of unicorns in that regard. I was in sales and marketing for 15, 16 years. And then my two partners that I've been a team with for 21 years, we purchased a local company and I became a business owner. Meteoric rise, we were really onto something. We had a lot of success there. We had a successful exit we bought the company in 2018. We had an exit in 2023. Throughout that entire process, even when I showed up, there was damage and brokenness and baggage that I brought to the table. It wasn't just becoming an entrepreneur that made me that way. I walked in the door with a lot of it. I will say it definitely accentuated it. It definitely heightened some of those things. But I'm now here at the EC working as an entrepreneur in residence for the in-flight program. I took a year off, and so I guess after I sold the company, technically I'm unemployed. But yeah, I kind of tried to figure out for the past year what I want to be when I grow up. Happen to have a new business partner that's here in the room, and we're working on a new whiz-bang product that is going to take the world by storm. So that's me. I also have a podcast called The Imposters. So it's a podcast on the imposter syndrome. And so it's three grown men that are talking about their feelings. But we have experts and guests on, and I have a book that I've been working on for a while that I need to go ahead and just get wrapped up, but it's called The Damage Advantage. And the idea is there's parts of that brokenness that we walk in with that actually, and imposter syndrome specifically, that can be weaponized, that can be turned into a force for good, and something that instead of letting it go to a deep, dark place, that there's some things that I try to arm entrepreneurs and business leaders with that can be effective tools on how they manage that portion of their day-to-day lives. So coming soon, The Damage Advantage.
My name is Rusty Goodsell. I moved here to Nashville from the DC area probably about 20 years ago. I am married to a beautiful Knoxville girl named Sarah. We met here in Nashville at a Christmas party. And we have three kids. I have a 13-year-old, an 11-year, a 13-year-old son, 11-year-old girl, and a 7, almost 8-year-old girl. Let's see, if kind of the origin story, I grew up in a blended family with a lot of dysfunction, and which I found is, kind of built some of the foundational things that later were exacerbated through entrepreneurialism or surfaced through that. Got into the tech space back in probably about 2008. I really, I've always loved business. I've always loved building things and have always had an entrepreneurial mindset. So I surrounded myself around people that were doing that for a number of different reasons, to learn from, to glean from them, and even got involved in a kind of a social startup, and some of you might know of it. It's called Thrift Smart. It was a competitor to Goodwill, and we were scaling it and doing all these cool things. And I had great mentors. And then 2008 hit, and no one's kept donating, and it just completely fell apart. And so I reluctantly went and started working with corporate AT&T. And was introduced to technology. And that's when kind of the light went off for me. I was like, oh, I understand business and I understand technology. But I also was introduced to bureaucracy and found that I was not a fan of that. But continued on in the tech space, got on with what's called a managed service provider, and helped them scale, sell. And then we just kept doing that, scale, sell, scale, sell. And then in January of 2020, perfect timing, I started a company called New Orchard, which is a technology platform. And so I've been doing that for the last 5.5 years. You'll hear, Tina might ask me a question of when you got sober. Alcohol is definitely a part of that, but when I talk about sobriety, it's a broad spectrum of things. So I built New Orchard for the first 2.5 years intoxicated, and had a lot of toxicity inside myself. And it was a really, really tough time. So you got COVID, and then you got toxicity. And so went through a journey, which ironically is the name of our technology. It's called The Journey.
Did you name it?
No, my business partner did at the time. So, but anyway, so that's, it's led me to where I am now. And here sitting in front of you, ready to talk about whatever, Tina.
Your feelings.
My feelings.
Two grown men talking.
That's
about
right.
their feelings.
Love it.
You guys are in for a treat.
That's what I said. It's gonna be a good one.
That's right.
Okay, well, getting into the question, so obviously we'll talk a lot about imposter syndrome. I didn't realize this until you and I became friends, that there is so much wrapped up in imposter syndrome. I thought, you were just kind of faking it till you make it, but there's a lot of fear and insecurity and stress, anxiety, identity. And so I'm excited to hear from you, both of you, what that's gonna be like or has been like for you. So my first question, Rusty. So you talked about addiction, or just mentioned it a little bit, that it started at a very young age, even 7, and then, continued on and off kind of throughout your life. And that was how you ended up starting New Orchard. And then after you got sober, you said, I'm going to read it because it's a good quote. You didn't know the power of what you were capable of after you were sober. You said, I was afraid to succeed in certain areas. I was afraid to believe that I was good at things. I was afraid to succeed because I'm afraid that I don't know how.
I said that.
You did say that. So thank you first for being so honest and vulnerable. More so now, like through my Hang On Health journey, the more that I've learned, I've started to hear that part of I don't know how to succeed, or even I'm scared of succeeding, is a lot more common than I thought it was. So can you talk a little bit about that, maybe elaborate on it, or how you handle it now?
Yeah, I think what I think I meant was I was afraid to be successful. And what would happen with success, because just in the things that I did have and whatever was in my life, I was screwing up, and so, what happens if this thing, it's almost like the dog that catches the car. Once they catch the car, they're like, oh crap, what do I do with this? And I didn't know what that looked like afterwards. So if I just kept that car just far enough in front of me, then I would not have to face some of that. And another word for that is called self-sabotaging. And I'd find myself unintentionally self-sabotaging. And I also, I didn't believe that I was smart enough, that the place that I came from, the experience that I had, the amount of money that my family didn't or did have, all of those things shaped me, and that's what was, that's who I was. And it wasn't until I had what I would call truth tellers, people around me that, kind of saw through that and called the bullshit. And, said, hey, look, and in fact, I'm thinking of this, and one of the guys that said this is here. He said, I think it's time for you to hedge your bets on yourself, and that really, like, when I was thinking about starting New Orchard and whatnot, it was time for me to bet on myself. And so, and for a while, I mean, even through starting it and beginning to start seeing some success, and entrepreneurialism, you guys all know this. Frankly, business, life is ups and downs. It's not just entrepreneurialism. And I found that I kept hitting something that I was afraid of. And it was the grit to kind of keep pushing through, to not always have to just show that I'm churning and burning and like, oh, I'm working so hard. It's like, there's another side to it. So I don't know if that makes sense or if that answers your question.
What is something you were afraid of?
Can I grab that one?
Sure.
So we talk a little bit about it's abnormal to think about failure of success for a lot of people. You hear a lot about failure or fear of failure. You hear a lot of fear of failure, but you don't hear as much about fear of success, but they orient from the same place. Neither are safe. When you're making advancement, when you're all the requirements to be a success, especially if you have imposter syndrome, that is a very unsafe place. And so if you ever hear that and have the first experience of that doesn't make sense, who fears success? Well, a lot of people do. And the logic is it orients from the same place. And it's neither are safe.
It was the thing that just kind of came to my mind is with more success, there's more to lose. And so my family was a big part of that. Like, I'm a risky person by nature. I always have been. I push things to the limit. I drive fast. I live fast. And
I don't know about that.
yeah, and it's
Nothing.
yeah, and it's I was afraid of the more success, the more power, the faster I would drive, and the bigger the loss would be. And I didn't want to experience that.
The lost part, is that because of kind of how you grew up? I mean, you didn't experience loss growing up, but it was harder for you.
I did experience loss growing up, but I didn't know it. My family claimed bankruptcy when I was 4 or 5 years old. I'm way too young to understand that. The results of that ended up being that, from the time that I was in elementary or in kindergarten to the time I was in high school, we moved 9 times from rental house to rental house, school to school, this and that. And so I thought that was normal. So I did experience that, and yeah, that probably does have an impact of what I was afraid to lose, so.
When we're younger, we don't realize how much we pick up subconsciously.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
I imagine that had more of an impact than you realized.
100%.
So going back to talking about the ups and downs of building a business or even in life, a lot of times as entrepreneurs, and the more that I think even in the startup community, you're rewarded for that resilience and just that drive and just keep going, keep going. I think it's starting to get a little bit better now that people realize you need to have some balance. But it also rewards hiding that pain. If you're working that hard, you don't have time to have pain. You don't have time to think about it or talk about it. You've both built really impressive companies. So how would you say is that something you've experienced, and how did you handle it?
Yeah. So, we talked a little bit about imposter syndrome, and there's a dynamic there where there's a voice in the back of my head. I'm always trying to prove that voice wrong. So there's an energy that gets expended there. So when it comes to becoming an entrepreneur, and this started in my sales career, there was a hunt for that hit of, I'm okay, I'm a success, I've done it, I'm great. But there's a term called hedonic adaptation that actually plays into imposter syndrome. And it's basically where you can experience an accomplishment. You can get the joy, you can get the dopamine and the serotonin. And then you kind of level set back down where you can no longer experience that success. Does anybody know, by the way, we're going to talk about imposter syndrome.
I was just going to say, can you define that for everybody?
Does anybody, so who's heard of imposter syndrome? Show of hands. Okay, pretty much everybody. Who has a good grasp on what it means? Yeah, the psycho professional in the back.
It's different for everybody.
Yeah.
And it is different for everybody. It lives on a spectrum. But there's a couple different, if you go to the Oxford dictionary, you can actually find a definition that I think it has utility. It's very useful. And what's funny about it is it's backwards looking. And what it basically says is it's the inability to experience your successes as though they're earned or deserved. Okay, I get my head around that. So inability to experience your successes as though they're earned or deserved. So with imposter syndrome, when you're having that experience, no matter how many plaques you have on the wall, no matter what the success is, no matter what the exit look like, when you look in the bank account, whatever the indicators are, there's always this sound of you didn't earn it. You had two partners that were kind of maybe drug you along. You were at the right place at the right time. You didn't really do that. You kind of flummoxed your way into it. So that is an inherent part of imposter syndrome. A lot of people, I think it's been overly democratized. So a lot of the conversations around imposter syndrome, and you hear the fake it till you make it, which personally, I hate that concept. I do not like it in any way whatsoever, because what worse advice can you give to someone who thinks they're a fake or a fraud or an imposter than to say, fake it? That's inherently just bad advice. But one of the other things that's an interesting dynamic is, and it's pop psychology in a lot of ways that's driven this, is, well, everybody experiences it. No, they don't. No. Everyone experiences self-doubt. And it's somewhere on a spectrum. And it might just be really good judgment that, yeah, you are out over your skis and you do not know what you're doing. And that's okay. That's an experiential level of just generalized self-doubt, but it's not imposter syndrome. So there's an entire conversation we can have for the rest of this session about the what is it and what isn't it. And it exists on a spectrum, and it's a fuzzy line. And even the name imposter syndrome, our psychotherapist in the room can say it's not a syndrome. The 1978 paper by Dr. Pauline Clance actually called it a phenomenon. The imposter phenomenon was the original name of it. So it's fraught with dynamics and misunderstanding and bad definitions. So I did want to take a second and just sort of frame, what do we mean when we say imposter syndrome? And then we can go into, and we really don't know exactly how to define it. It's very fuzzy, but we can talk a little bit about what it's not. And hopefully that helps in the understanding of it.
Quick question, is it always negative, or can it
And if you feel like you are an imposter and you haven't deserved what you received, could it ever actually drive positive results, motivate you in some way? Or is it all?
Do you look at
Is
the
he
question?
plugging my book right
That's it.
now? That's part of the idea of the damage advantage is that there's an energy that gets expended. And if you can capture that energy and point it in a good direction, it can actually be a force for good. Now, it's not a positive thing for me in the way that I experience it. It's always negative. It is always negative. But can it be a force for good? Yeah, you got to put it somewhere. And can you also take it and point it away from the bad places? Yes. So suicide ideation, alcoholism and drug abuse, hurt people. And so having that extenuation of your own issues that get passed down to your family or your friends or your children, those are all things that, and this is turning into a
Q&A.
interview process, but I'll take it.
Is it shame essentially? I mean, are we talking about the imposter syndrome?
It's much more sinister than that.
Okay.
The short answer could be yes, but it's much more sinister than that.
So I think you just, because I was thinking about one of my questions, but you may have covered it already, like what is that conversation inside your head? Is it like good evil, bad evil?
Yes. I mean, the conversations, all I can do is speak from my experience. And the conversations were, you're not smart enough. No one believes in you. Everyone doubts you and they're talking about it behind the scenes. They're orchestrating something to take you out of this situation. I mean, there's just a number of different voices that it sounds like, at least for me.
So how did you overcome that?
I drank it. I mean, I drank it. I worked
Well,
it
that didn't overcome, that quieted it.
for a minute. It silenced it. It gave me a minute to breathe. In our society, especially the workforce, we romanticize alcohol. And this is not, I don't give a rip if you drink or not. I can't. But it became the thing that I would think about all day, like I wouldn't drink throughout the day, but then I'm thinking about that time that I get to take a break. And what I'm saying is I get to shut off. I get to shut the voice off. And so it shuts off for a little bit and then it wakes up the next day and it's more powerful because now on top of it, I've got shame and guilt and sadness and all these other things that are just kind of like, so I might have been here, now I'm a little here. I just kind of keep, silencing.
As a consequence from the alcohol.
You got it. And it just is a cyclical cycle that it was, for me, that was hard for me to dig out of.
Okay, so you stopped drinking.
Yeah,
And do you still feel like you have imposter syndrome now?
100%.
How do you deal with it now?
I came from a family that we did not do feelings. So I had this thing inside of me that was an alien to me. And my father was is not dead, is a very stern, like when the storm is coming, we knew that he was the rock, and we could lean in on that. And he did that without emotion. I think I saw my father cry one time, and it's when our dog died. And so I adopted that. I didn't recognize feelings. I didn't know what to do with feelings. I didn't know how to talk about feelings. I mean, I lived with people that were like, do you have feelings? And I'm like, I don't think so. So I got sober and I was introduced to feelings and like, okay, I know I've heard about these things before. And I know it's a part of my marriage that I'm not like interacting all the time with it. how do I talk to feel, or how do I experience feelings? How do I even acknowledge feelings? And isn't it kind of wussy to experience or talk about feelings? Polar opposite, absolute polar opposite. So I became more in tune and aware of feelings. And so that's how, so yes, do the voices still come? 100%. I've practiced kind of it's ANOI, accept it, normalize it, own it, and invite it.
Yeah.
That's kind of my rhythm when those voices kind of pop in.
There's an interesting thing that I've thought of recently, and it's the alcohol and drinking. You quiet the voices down and they go away. And there's a neurochemical conversation to have here that even in the hangover, and I would get 2-day hangovers, I don't know about you, but in those 2 days, eventually it would segue over into depression. It would segue over into shame, and it would segue over, and it was probably something where I had to pick up the phone, start making phone calls and apologizing. So it was not just generalized shame. It was literally, I'm so sorry. But there was a weird dynamic that part of that hangover actually also quieted. And so whatever that imbalance that occurs there, and I don't have any answers to what it is, but I just find it fascinating that there was a part of time where there was almost a comfort in the hangover component too, even though it felt like hell, that voice was quiet. And I never was able to put my finger on why.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
You talk about Hang On Health is about informing, right? And education.
Something out loud that I bet you say to yourself. You say, get over it.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah, that's it. That is horribly uninstructive advice. There is not much you can do with that, or there's nothing that comes after that.
Right.
So you ask the question, how do you get over it? How do you get past it? How do you get through it? One step at a time. And, personally, thousands of dollars in therapy and successes and failures and damage. And, it's not easy, but what can maybe be instructive is one step at a time and not alone. Those are the two best pieces of advice. I say, and I said this yesterday, there are two types of people. There are people that are in therapy, and there are people that need to be in therapy. That's it. Pretty much in this world right now, there are people in therapy and people that need to be in therapy. So seek help, seek community, but also know and maybe be patient. Don't rush it.
Did you say no?
It is a process.
No, it's like, that is the patience is not one of the virtues I have.
Yeah, sure.
Should probably share my presentation with them from yesterday.
Yeah, you guys get together and chat.
Might as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
That was vulnerable.
I know that was hard. I just wonder you talked about, everyone says success, it's right around the corner. What's success to you?
Ooh,
I mean, you might be really successful right now.
Yeah.
Billions of dollars more.
And then the next question, right? And then the next question is why?
Yeah.
Why? Why?
For me, it is, and then I'll shut up, a few things. Mission driven, so I do believe that what I am doing is the right thing for society and the world, and it gives me purpose. So I joke, it is about the money, but it's not. I really want to succeed because it has meaning.
Mhm.
But I also want to buy that house in the Hamptons.
Yeah. I get it.
So in 2014, I was I had a home that was trying to kill me. It was in a very, very illustrious part of town. It was right off of Franklin Road, Otter Creek, Radnor Lake area. I had a Rolex, I had a Range Rover, I had a six-figure job, all those things. I also had this house that I couldn't keep up with the repairs on it. I got myself into debt. Oddly, alcoholism at that time really wasn't in major the forefront. But in December 2014, I attempted suicide. And it was a real kind of phoenix from the ashes process. Spent a week at Rolling Hills and met some real interesting people, but it was not a pleasant time, but it was probably one of the most profound times in my life. And one of the best things that I came out with there was that all of these things that I owned me. And what I didn't know how to do was quantify me and just, hey, I'm a pretty good person. I've got some unique talents. I care about people. There's all these things that I used all the wrong yardsticks. And I think that's one other step that we have to do. And, there's some, and again, pop psychology where it gets too fuzzy and you go, oh God, and the irony kicks in and you start eye rolling. But no kidding, you've got to get good with you somewhere along the line, or it could possibly kill you. Now, luckily, here I said, but yeah.
I was just wondering, when you think about triggers, like things that cause those voices to pop, is it ambiguity or a sense of that I don't have control, and because I don't have control, everybody's nodding your head. Okay, you don't have to answer your question.
Oh, yeah. That's a great question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, but not always. I mean, it could be I'm walking into a very clear situation where on an intellectual level, I understand that I'm right in the room I need to be. Maybe I'm the most experienced person in that room at that time, in that moment. Intellectually, I can understand that. But that subconscious underpinning component that was trained into me, that has its own voice. And don't ever try to attempt to make a logical thought logical. They follow a logic process, but they're illogical by nature. And so that self-doubt, regardless of the proof to the contrary, I'm gonna orient from places of self-doubt often.
So going to self-doubt, when you and when we had coffee, I thought this was really interesting with a concept I hadn't really heard of. You mentioned unhealthy ego, self-efficacy, and self-esteem. So can you talk about that?
I will plagiarize this. I'll have to give the credit to Chris Kelso, someone who I actually found out about imposter syndrome. He was the person that introduced the concept to me. And let me tell you, when he said two words out loud and asked me, do you know anything about imposter syndrome? Hearing those two words, like your comment, it twisted a lens for me. And a lot about my life that had been fuzzy up to that point came into focus. And it was profound, a profound moment. So Chris talks about this, and I'll talk about it as well, because I found it very useful for me. There's the idea of self-esteem and there's the idea of self-efficacy. Self-esteem is a feeling, and feelings are fickle. Feelings are going to be illogical. And feelings may come from places of damage and hurt and from places of subconscious. And so those feelings of self-esteem may be completely out of alignment with reality, with your accomplishments, with your abilities. Self-efficacy, on the other hand, actually orients more towards that intellectual part of your brain. And it's, A, do I have the skills? B, do I have the ability to go and whatever it is that I'm trying to solve or whatever problem I find on myself, do I have the skills to go figure it out, even if I don't know what I'm doing? If the answer is yes, that's self-efficacy. And so self-esteem can be imposter all day long. It can be a feeling and it can be fickle. Self-efficacy can be, even though we'll have that doubt component, it comes into the intellectual part of our brains better. and allows us to maybe navigate a little more
So
of.
the action
It-
of
it's-
how do I do this?
It's the capability in the ability where you may orient towards past proofs. That I can do this, I know I've done it before, I know I have the skills on an intellectual level. That's when then the imposter starts kicking in and goes, yeah, but self-efficacy is sometimes and for me, it's all about frameworks. It helps adjust that lens a little bit so that I can understand those feelings. Doesn't always change the feelings or make it go away, but it helps me navigate them. So that I found those two terms very, very useful. Ego, I actually got a better understanding of through the process that part of it was really learn more that week in rolling hills. And you start understanding, and I think most people, when they hear arrogance, at least or for me, I hear arrogance. I think ego and I attach it with arrogance, and it's not what ego is. Ego is just self-orientation. And unhealthy ego is arrogance and typically oriented insecurity, and it orients towards the self. Healthy ego is a good thing. The ego is not the enemy, regardless of what the book says. Ego is what gets the fork to the mouth. It is one of the biggest drivers of human achievement on the planet. But boy, it can go awry. And so healthy ego and unhealthy ego, I think, is a better way to look at it, because if they're diametrically opposed, that literally means you're opposed to yourself, because that's what the ego is. So we could talk about this a lot longer, but those are some of the things that, again, were just kind of frameworks of understanding that I learned along the way.
Any comments, questions? No?
You
like your ego?
Right. You got a good one, it's fine.
You got that.
It's in check.
That's all right.
I'm not a professional, but I play one on a podcast.
You had mentioned action, and a lot of times I find that we sit around and we think too much. There's always that moment where you're supposed to take an action in order to move this thing that you're trying to do down the field. And I think a lot of folks get hung up thinking too much, and I'm one of them. And so I always have to have a list of things that I'm working on. So when that self-doubt gets hairy, if you take an action, it's like that. I think that's a saying in the room: move a muscle, change a thought. It's that kind of, there's a lot of moving parts to this whole thing. And so if we get hung up and we don't take the action at the time that you're supposed to take it, that window, that particular meeting, or that person that you may have, that thing that might have happened doesn't happen. And if you orient towards action and then, sitting back and that flow state starts to happen, and people talk about that flow state as like you're firing at all cylinders, right? I studied some leadership training with guys that were prone to action and less cerebral. And I think there's a balance between those two things, because a lot of this is actually checking stuff off of the list, until you get your team.
To Doug's point, part of what you're also talking about is movement from ambiguity to clarity. Now, you also mentioned that the flip side of that is that step towards clarity creates more complications with the step you take and the achievements. And then suddenly that kicks all over again, where that ambiguity creeps back in, or that exposure creeps back in, or you're in that unhealthy or in that unsafe space because you're taking action. But I do think that ambiguity question that Doug tied into a lot of what you were saying.
Ambiguity is the killer of execution.
Yeah.
And it can freeze you.
So I want to turn it over a little bit back to business. One of the reasons why I started Hang On Health is because when I felt like I was going through the hard business things, and then even when I started to get my diagnoses, I felt very alone and I didn't know who I could talk to. And I have amazing friends and a lot of women business owner friends, but yet whenever I would talk to them and say, hey, how's it going? It was always good. Everything's always good. Talk to anybody, it's, oh, things are great, things are good. But like, are they really? And so all of us, I guess whether you're an entrepreneur or not, live behind this facade of, yeah, everything's great. And that could be good with certain people at certain times, but when it gets into business and it gets into managing your teams, is there a level of honesty or vulnerability that you show with them that could either be good, but it could also be bad? But Rusty, you and I have talked about this a lot, so I'd love to see or hear how you handle that with your teams.
I thought it was interesting. I kept looking back at those stats that you were throwing up. I think it was number 8 or 9. 81% of founders hide from their investors or whatever it may be. And I believe that 100%. I think it's very hard to walk the line of how transparent you are in your role, either as that entrepreneur, CEO, leader, spouse, parent, whatever it may be. Like, what is it? How can I be transparent enough with my team to where I'm not just kind of leading them where I'm throwing that smoke and mirrors up of like, oh, everything's fine, we're good, and we're out of money, or but I found this out the hard way. I mean, I had to learn and hurt people, including myself. I didn't have to, but that's what happened. And so, I was very transparent with my team in the very beginning of where we were, what I was afraid of, or things along those lines. But I think what helped is having an understanding of what the truth is. Hey, here's where we are. Here's where we're going. Here are the things that are standing in our way. Am I concerned? Yes. Do I believe that we can do this? Yes. And just there's a lot of things of like speaking matter of fact. I know I'm going to get dinged on this one, but stick with the facts. And at times I would have to remove the emotion out of it, and just like, this is what it is. Now, how does that make you feel? Where are you? Kind of checking in on those types of things.
How did they reply to that? Were they honest?
Yeah, they were honest. All right. At times they were angry. They were scared. And what I learned, this is pre-sobriety and pre-understanding feelings, is I wanted to fix that feeling. I wanted to rescue them from that feeling. After I sat with them in that feeling, and I was like, yeah, I get it. I hear that. And
which I think makes them respect you more.
Right.
And brings you closer to them, better bonding that way.
Yeah, I mean, the transparency, I would say New Orchard has had 2 phases of its life, pre-sobriety and sobriety. I would say
Journey.
Yeah, it's been a journey. New Orchard. No, I'm just kidding. But the post or continued sobriety, I guess I should say, the relationships are, I would say, stronger. There's more transparency. There's more, kind of dealing with some of these things. And we just had to, just recently had some hard stuff in our business, hard conversations. And I had a very angry individual that still loves me and still loves to work with me. And that was a hard experience, but the best way to deal with it was let that individual be as angry as they needed to be. Let them be as hurt as they needed to be, and not try to rescue them from that.
Hear, hug, or help. It's a great mnemonic.
Hear.
Do you want me to hear? Do you want me to hug? Or do you want me to help?
Yeah.
That has been a key to success in my marriage, because I'm the jump to the help person also. And
that goes into my next question.
Oh boy.
Key to your marriage, those 3 words.
Yeah.
Because as I mentioned earlier, we should also be aware of what our significant others and friends and team members are going through. So I always like to make sure I cover how you handle these mental struggles with your family and what is that kind of transparency and vulnerability. And I think that's a great tactic. So maybe you can start with that.
Well, definitely the Hear Hug Help, it helps me orient towards matching and pairing with the needs of my spouse. I would say there's no logical reason why my wife is still with me, by the way. She should have left me a long time ago.
Sure.
I'll put that. She's a saint, so it's gonna be difficult to talk about this in such a way where it's gonna make sense, but
Can I say something real fast?
Yeah.
So what I've learned in all of this when trying to communicate with somebody and they start to express their feelings is not to just jump and fix. I always ask, how do you want me to respond? But they don't really know how to answer that either, I just realized. But that is a great way for them to think, oh, okay, well, I just want to hug or whatever. So just building on that those two questions could go together.
once the vulnerable train starts, it can become a little intrusive into someone else that maybe isn't on the exact same moment with you. And my wife's always available, but sometimes she just wants to walk the dogs and is tired of hearing the roller coaster situation that I had with one of my business partners. It was actually just the same story repeating itself over and over and over and over that never actually got fixed. And so we sometimes had some code words of, not right now. That's the other thing is there needs to be another H that is the equivalent of, hold. I love it, hold.
Nice.
And so I think
Different to his
sometimes
hook.
in that vulnerability, sometimes you got to ask permission for it, especially in that intimate
Yeah.
relationship and always on a relationship of a marriage.
I think the more that you work on yourself, when I give this to me, when I started owning the stuff that was on my side of the street, it freed my wife to go back to her side of the street. And it was really interesting because she's so used to coming over here and handling my addictions, my problems, my this, and managing. And then there was a point where she had to kind of step back and she didn't know what to do. And I had to leave. I had to let her experience that and then slowly walk back over to her side of the street and stay there. Now we try to keep each other back over there.
Get to your side.
But in that, it's helped me learn how to communicate better about what is going on with the business. And, so what I would do is I would come over to her side of the street when she's hearing that we're not making any money this month or we're not doing this. And then she's starting to freak out. And I'm like, but let me sell you on why this is going to work. Instead of, scary, isn't it? And just hearing her and, so I think that's where once I own my stuff and begin to understand my feelings and those types of things, no matter whether it's my coworkers, my spouse, my kids. I will tell this real quick story. I came home from an intensive, which is like a week-long get in your junk kind of therapy. And I learned all about these feelings and everything. So I came home and my two girls at night, I would start asking them like, hey, tell me about your feelings. And they're like, what? And I'm like, why are you sad? Do you have fear? Do you have, this? Did you experience this today? Now my girls will lay in their bed. Yeah, I'm ready for bed. I want to talk about my feelings. Like,
That's awesome.
on my way. So it's hysterical.
So we're getting a little close on time. I do want to wrap up with kind of one more section, just talking about healing and how we, at least get to be more comfortable with where we are. So Rusty, I'm going to start with you on how you have made yourself feel better and some of the things that you've told yourself and taught yourself over the years.
You know, there were three guys sitting over here and they've left. These are a group of guys that I've been meeting with every Monday night for 20 years. Those guys know me, and one of the reasons I invited them is they can call me out, and they would have if I wasn't, or just even giving me a look. I would not be able to have made it without being seen and known by others, and giving and inviting those individuals into my life. And at the foundation of that is our faith. I have a strong faith that I rely on, and we talk about, there's so many people that will talk about detaching from your work and this, and you aren't understanding where my foundation is actually starts and is built from, allows me to step in to those places and be the same person across all. So I don't have to put on a New Orchard hat. I don't work for New Orchard. I work for Goodsell Incorporated, and I have a board of advisors. It's my wife, my kids, my faith, and that's who I work for. And I contract, even though I started New Orchard, I contract my services to New Orchard. So understanding, and for me, is just understanding where I'm giving power away. So that's helped me kind of live holistically and succinctly.
But there's something else.
Okay, I got it.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am. I have a octopus that lives inside of me. That might sound a little weird. Anxiety and stress, those voices that are
A little louder than I intended.
so what you're receiving right now was Tina's version of what I was describing to her. I said, this octopus looks a little different than inside of me, but I like the thought that you're going with here. That's right. So let me explain what this is. So Hank is the name of this octopus. Hank for me represents the anxiety monster that lives inside of me. There is no rhyme or reason. Anxiety would come and go as it would please. But what would happen is, like a tentacle, it will grab a hold of something and begin to squeeze. And that was the panic, that was the anxiety inside of me. I would feel that, I would drink that, I would avoid that, I would do all these things. And the harder that I would fight it, the tighter that the octopus would squeeze. And it wasn't until I learned that Hank won't kill me, anxiety won't kill me, panic won't kill me. And what I needed to learn how to do is let it do it. Let it squeeze as hard as it could. And it put me in the hospital at one point because I was having an all-out panic attack. I thought I was having a heart attack. It was Hank, and I had been fighting Hank, and Hank was like, hell no, I've got this. And so I had to become friends with Hank. And thank you. The person I was working with, the therapist that I was working with, was like, look, you've got to name this thing. And you've got to visualize this thing as it's grabbing a hold, accept that you have anxiety, accept the situation that you have, normalize it. Like everything that we're all human. There's nothing new that we're all going through that someone 20, 30, 50 years ago didn't experience at some level. And so normalizing that, like, I'm not alone. This is not a just me thing. And invite Hank, Hank, get comfortable. I'm with you. You got a thought? Yeah.
I just want to say I resonated so much with so many things people have said, and even your word through, you have to go through things. And really what I found as a psychotherapist is that two basic things most people struggle with, and that is feelings, what feelings? And especially when we're educated and we're informed and we're smart, we tend to intellectualize. Well, you know, my dad didn't have a good childhood and that's why he was mean to me, but what were the feelings? So the feelings are normal, we have to go through them. And even what you just said, I tell people the feelings are not going to kill you that way. And then as far as imposter goes, I mean, everyone is different. I've never met the same person. Everybody's different. But you know, what you're talking about earlier, you know, as a child, you need that reflection from your caregiver, from your parent that I'm smart, I'm good, I'm pretty, I made a cute drawing in class, I'm good at building trains. If you don't get that, you know, you grow up fundamentally impoverished inside and can't really value yourself and don't feel like you're up to par. So that really can play a lot in as well. And also entrepreneurs take a path that is very individual, right? A lot of people are just what I need to do the corporate thing that works for me. Everybody's different, no judgment. But being an entrepreneur is this path. I'm going to make my own way. I have a vision. It's very isolating. And maybe there's something you have to prove to that parent on some conscious level. So anyway, thank you for all your wonderful comments.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Sure. So after 20 years, I'm kind of going to contradict something I said earlier, but after 20 years of therapy, I've actually taken a break. I was going in on a bi-weekly basis, and I was updating my therapist on stuff. It was just updates. And what I've realized is I've gone through about a 5-year process where it felt like 20 years of work has really kind of come to fruition. And then I was just giving updates on, there was no therapy going. And so I just, look, it seemed like, you know, I'm in a place where I think I want to tap out for a little bit. And he said, I've been thinking that also. And so we agreed to hold the spot for a while. And if I need it, come on back. But I stopped therapy. And then one of the things that's really been something I've been blessed to be able to do is, and this comes to the healthy ego component. You know, it's great to focus on others when one of your problems is how much you focus on yourself. And so one of the things that I've been trying to do is stuff like this. If I can talk to people, if I can take what somebody did for me over Thai food one day and said, have you ever heard of imposter syndrome? And changed my world and my life and helped get me to that point where I could tap out of therapy for a little bit. If I can pay that forward in any way whatsoever, what a great drug that is.
Mhm.
And I'll be addicted to that drug and I'll be okay with it.
Yeah.
So.
All right, well, does anybody else have any more questions? Comments?
If you want to know what Hank looks like for real, go to that Disney movie Dora.
No, Finding Nemo.
Finding Nemo, but it's.
Second one.
It's the second one.
Yes.
When you said it, that's where
The
my.
octopus that's like sneaking around and like just freaking out all the time. That's Hank.
When I saw that movie, my kid's like, Mom, that's you.
Yeah.
Oh.
There you go. I don't have a handout. What do
Well,
I?
I want to thank you guys so much